Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to the training session series of Deanship of E-Learning at IIT Jazan University. Myself Rima Shaheen, and today we are going to discuss a very interesting topic, that is the development of dynamic activities in the environment of blended learning. Let's move towards our topic and let's have a look what is basically dynamic activities and what is a dynamic learning environment in the environment of blended learning. As we know that education is no longer just about putting pen to paper and memorizing the facts. Today, innovative educators in both higher education and corporate learning and development are improving learning through technology, as evidenced by the rapid adoption of technology assisted teaching method and blended learning models, which includes the online learning, virtual learning. You can say the virtual learning, the electronic digital things are involved now. The things are not static anymore, that is dynamic. If I explain what is the dynamic learning activities to give you a one clear idea about what we are going to talking about, you all are much familiar with the terminologies of the online learning, the e-learning, and the blended learning. But there is some misconceptions about the blended learning or online learning. The people still thinking about if we connect with any kind of technology, we can say that we are in an environment of a blended learning. I will explain that we have a very rich features of a blended learning we have to implement in the education system to actually saying that we are in a blended learning environment. Before going towards to know more detail and the depth features about the blended learning, I want to explain this terminology, that is a dynamic learning activities. Dynamic learning is active, engaging, and student-driven. It is often framed out open-ended tasks and projects that have a particular related to our practical and the real-world applications are relevant to the students' lives. To facilitate this kind of learning, teachers and students need the right kind of physical environment. If you are talking about something which is engaging the student, which can be interact with the students, we have to create an environment which have the technologies, which have the dynamic activities, which will be integrate with the technology and the real environment as well. So if we just take some points from the dynamic learning approach for the teaching and the learning process, we can say we have to focus on that students must be related to some active things. That is a dynamic approach to learning implies that the students are active, are involved in what they are learning. This implies adopting a whole new approach to a lesson, so they are not just waiting, not just listening or watching or anything. They have to be involved or participate in that activity. Today's education aim is to make your student more engaging, more practical, more participate in your activities to learn more productive outcomes. As we see that the education is not a static process. Education is a dynamic process. Education is not static because the dynamic process which develops the child according to the changing situation and times. Just have a little example like the COVID-19. Before that, the education area, education system, the modes of educations were totally different. As the need of the time, as the need of the situation, we just switch to the other mode of the system. We just switch to the other multi-channel to deliver the education. So that is called education, not a static process. This is basically a dynamic process. It always includes the individual toward progress. It reconstructs the society according to the changing needs of the time and the place of the society. If we stuck with the same procedure of the learning before, like we had before the COVID, that means we just stop the education. We don't have any new involvement, new procedure about the education. Then what would happen? Our education was just stuck. But we construct the new things, we adopt the new things in our education system through all over the world to make the education dynamic, to make the education in a process. So you can say this is an important thing to make the education from one phase to another phase. It can't be in a one typical manner. And dynamic learning is a learning categorized by the constant change, activity, and progress. This is where learning lives, grows, connects, and extend beyond the boundaries of the class day, beyond the physical locations, beyond using the tools as digital substitutes, and even beyond the due dates, supporting critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and the creative skills. So today we will discuss about how we can make our blended learning environment in a dynamic activities, and how we will be able to integrate our technology to make the things dynamic, interactive, and productive for the students. Let's just have a look about the revised, the blended learning. What is basically a blended learning? Mostly people are seeing that we are much familiar with the online learning, virtual learning, blended learning, but just using you can say multimedia in a classroom or mobiles in a classroom, that doesn't mean you can say you are in a blended learning environment. We have a very enriched features of a blended learning that will explain that there is actually a different models. You have to implement the one of the model, and then you can say yes, we are in a blended learning environment. If I'm talking about the blended learning, that must be related to the hybrid learning model, which what does actually mean of that? Blended learning, also known as a hybrid learning, is a method of teaching that integrate teaching and digital media with traditional instructor-led classroom activities. So you can say that if we are talking about something, the traditional classroom plus something related to the online or a virtual classroom, it will be integrated with the technology, with all the enriched technology, which will give us a one interactive, engaging, active, collaborative outcomes. Then we can say yes, there is a blended learning environment. Basically, blended learning environment gives students a more flexibility to customize their learning experience. So we can say the blended learning, also known as hybrid, is a method of teaching that integrate technology and digital media with traditional instructor-led classroom activities, gives students more flexibility to customize their learning experience. So this is basically a purpose of a blended learning, that you can say you have an integration between the technology and the traditional education system. Still, we need to implement the different things, different dynamic activities to make it a productive. If I'm using in a classroom a one just static video, it's a recorded video or any recorded PPT form, you just create a one PowerPoint and just showing up on a multimedia, that's not enough. This is not our purpose. To perform the actually, what is the actual meaning of a blended learning is just you are misunderstanding. Digital media with the traditional instructor-led classroom activities, giving students more flexibility to customize their learning, and the method of teaching to integrate technology. So we are going to know about all these things, that how we will be able to integrate the technology with a very productive way, which will be not just make our students stuck with and just waiting and watching or listening. We need to make our students to be actively participate and engage in our content. If I explain a little more about the blended learning models or modes, you can say it is divided into two parts. The first one is the traditional education system plus the online education system. If I am talking about the online education system, so that is also parted in a two kind of thing, that is a synchronous learning and asynchronous learning. The synchronous learning basically are learning the same thing at the same time with the same medium. And if I'm talking about the asynchronous learning, that is learning the same thing at different times with the possible different mediums. And if I'm talking about the traditional learning, that is learning in the same thing at the same time and place, but 6 feet from each other. What does it mean? Why we mention here about the 6 feet? As after the finish the COVID-19, we just start the classes, but still there is some restrictions. You are in a classroom, but with some distance, with the 6 feet of distance to just sit in the classroom and just you can take your education in the same place or the same medium. So it will be looks like that inside with the marketers or outside of the mask on, and the procedure of maintaining distance between the students could be fewer students. And if I'm talking about what does it looks like in a virtual environment, that would be look like a virtual meetings, the real-time class chat, and the learning management system tools like Google Classroom, the Blackboard. We need the different discussion models, and we need this self-paced activities. So these are already used in classrooms to make the outcomes better.